Hello. We're here at the Gaylord, what's the name of the place? The Gaylord,
Marriott, yes.
Gaylord Marriott at
No,
Thanksgiving.
just the Gaylord.
At National Harbor.
We just finished dinner at McCormick and Schmick's, which was very good. And so we have some questions for you. Are you ready?
Questions for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, well, what's
State your name for the record. Are you,
Harriet and Sam, for the record.
Wait, are we being graded on this?
no. When did you two meet?
When I was 13 years old,
Yes.
we were a group of girls and there was a group of boys.
Everything we did was groupies. We never did anything like dates or anything. So there was a group of neighborhood boys that we're still friendly with and a group of neighborhood girls.
And
Well-
several of us are still married to the same spouses.
What year was it? Do you remember?
Well, no, I don't want to remember because that'll give you mommy's age.
Ah.
But what had happened was we invited a friend of ours' brother, who was in medical school. He was with us for some reason, and he was teaching me how to hypnotize people. He was a medical student.
When you were did you do this when you were 13?
Well, I was 14.
Uh-huh.
And I hypnotized your mother by having her
Still?
hold an item, a knife. She held a knife, and I hypnotized her, and then she really was hypnotized. I got frightened, so I woke her up, and she couldn't let go of the knife. So I felt real bad for her, so I married her.
Mom, do you realize that you're still hypnotized?
Yes,
That's why you married him.
right.
So that's, I brought her home, my parents yelled at me a little bit, and as groupies, we saw each other. We were very young, and we went to school together. I was ahead of her,
2 years ahead.
yeah, 2 years ahead, and I graduated graduated high school very early and went to college at night. I was 16 and a half years old, and I don't know, things just developed. We fell in love, and we decided to get married.
When you got out of high school, where did you work?
Oh, I worked even in high school. I
Well,
worked,
when did you start working and what did you do?
the first thing I did was I worked
Nathan's.
at Nathan's Hot Dogs, if you know what Nathan's is. Yeah, I worked at the potato portion of it, and I worked my tail off there.
When was this? Was this during high school?
You know, everything.
Well, like what grade? Do you remember?
I don't know, fifth term. Well, I was 13 years old.
No, you weren't.
I was 15 there. I was 15 there. But prior to that, I worked in a candy supply house.
And didn't you work in a garage?
Well, that was later.
Later on, I worked in the garage, and
Must have been 17 then.
but I also worked in the mountains as a waiter.
What mountains?
Catskill Mountains. I worked in many hotels,
Only during the summers, or?
summers.
What about you, Mom?
And while he was working at Nathan's, I worked as a cashier renting beach chairs on the beach. So I would go up to him during my lunchtime, and he'd give me all these free fried potatoes at Nathan's. That was fun. And then when he worked up in the mountains, I used to go up for the weekends.
Of course, Mom had some cousins up there that lived in Monticello, so she used to go up for the weekends, and I'd meet her. And I used to bring all my friends up there because, I don't know, for some reason, when they hired me, I took my own crew. So 3 or 4 of us worked together in the mountains, and we demanded, we had some power there.
And so you guys met when you were 13 or so, and how'd you get along with each other's parents?
Well, my parents were screwed up.
Uh-huh.
I got along well with Mom's parents very well. And they treated me like a son, so I treated them like my parents. My parents, that wasn't the case.
And you had, well, you had siblings, right? You have siblings.
Yes.
And so, Mom, tell us about Aunt Arlene.
Well, if you have to have a sister, that's the best kind to have. She always took care of me,
What's the age difference between you?
7 years. And until I was about 8 years old, I didn't know she had a name. I thought her name was Sister, because my mother would say, go to Sister. Sister will take you to the park. Sister will take you to the movies. Say, where's Sister? So I thought her name was Sister.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was older that I said, my God, she has another name.
Yeah.
And when she started working, that was the first time I got an allowance.
We were very
We were
poor.
very poor.
And where did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
Telephone,
Huh?
Where'd you grow up?
Coney Island. We were very poor. And my worst recollection is I had these guppies, little like goldfish, in a bowl. And it was so cold that it was just so cold. We had no heat. And I woke up and the whole thing was frozen. The whole fish bowl was frozen and the fish were frozen. I can never get that out of my mind. That's how cold it was where we lived. It was terrible.
And Dad, I remember from your parents' place on Neptune Avenue. Wasn't
That
that like?
wasn't theirs, it was my grandmother's.
Oh, okay.
And it was like a bungalow with stucco around it. And I have two siblings. I have an older brother, he's 3 years older than me.
Stanley.
And my sister Joan, she's 4 years younger than me. No more,
That's
she's
all
7
she knows.
years.
She's 7 years
She's
old.
7 years younger than me. And there was always a problem with my sister and brother. And my brother, there was a problem. And eventually, Mom and I decided to get married, and we moved out.
What? Well, did you have any pets?
We couldn't
Couldn't
afford,
afford the rent.
we couldn't afford the rent that his parents were
Wanted to charge
were
him.
charging him.
Yeah.
So it was less expensive for us to get married.
That's very romantic.
Yep.
And so, where did you actually get married?
In a rabbi's house
In New York.
in Brooklyn,
Brooklyn,
on a
yes.
Thursday night,
Mhm.
because he didn't have school on Friday night, and my day off was Friday. So we got married on a Thursday night, and of course there were no invitations or stuff like that. And 120 people showed up at the rabbi's house to watch us get married, which was really wonderful. And of course we couldn't afford anything, so we had schnapps and honey cake.
We had a couple bottles of booze and some
And
honey
that was
cake.
it, and that was it.
I worked 5 days a week and went to school. I worked in the city, and I worked all over.
What were you doing at that time?
I think at
The
that
lab,
time, I worked at Hempstead General Hospital
the lab.
in the biochemical lab. I did blood analysis. And I worked 5 days a week, and I went to school 4 nights a week till mid.
Where did you go to school?
I went to many schools, but most of my work I did at Brooklyn College, but I also went to Hofstra, City Uptown, right? I go to any other schools. Eventually, I had 142 credits. I only needed 124, and while I was working and doing these things, I would come home from school like 11 o'clock at night and start to study. Most people are sleeping by then. And Mom worked as a dental hygienist. She went to graduate school and became a dentist, so she had to work also. And 2 o'clock in the morning, she would get up, and I'd fall asleep on my books. She'd wake me up, and I'd go to bed, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was out going to Long Island. So I did that 4 days a week. That's why we got married on a Thursday, because I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
No, but then, Thursday night, we drove up to the mountains after the wedding.
That was
This was
the
gonna be our honeymoon. Except we got to the room and Dad fell asleep. And then we had to be back on Sunday because Dad's cousin Michael and Gladys were getting married, so we had to go to their wedding. So we had like a 2-day honeymoon.
And
And I drove because I became a mechanic, quotes, on the job, learning. What I did is I used to buy a car for about $15, $25. In fact, I didn't even buy it. My in-laws, Ma and Pa, bought it. And if the car didn't work, I used to work in the garage, so the guy, I'd say, "What's wrong?" He says, "Well, you need a generator." So I used to go to the junk shop and say, "I need it." What?
Junkyard, yeah.
Junkyard, and I say, "I need a generator." And they'd give me this piece of machinery. Then I would go to my car and try to find the same piece of machinery. You know, you would see like I'd take everything out of the car. Finally, I'd find a piece of machinery and I'd change it. And then I was an expert on generators. And then I did the same, voltage regulators, transmissions, rear end. So I knew how to take care of cars. So I never spent more than $25 for a car.
so,
And I had many
And we
cars.
used to keep parts in the trunk, especially fan belts, because at that time, yeah, but the fan belts were when somebody would be stuck on the road,
Yeah.
and we'd pull over and to help them, and we'd always have a fan belt that we could give to someone to get their
Or
car
ho-
going.
or hoses.
Or a hose,
Yeah.
a radiator hose.
I kept
Kept
it
it in
all.
the trunk of the car. So
Yeah.
when people would get stuck, we would just stop and give it to them.
So, Bobby, what was your education like as a dental hygienist? Where did
Well,
you?
originally I wanted to be a nurse, but my parents, they weren't happy about me becoming a nurse. So the closest thing I could find to wear a white uniform was a dental hygienist.
Why didn't they want you to be a nurse?
The type of work, I don't think
just
they
didn't want
wanted
me
her to do.
it.
So, where did you go to school to
In
become
Brooklyn.
a dental
In Brooklyn.
hygienist?
I went to
Val-
school.
Valedictorian.
Yeah, I did graduate valedictorian.
What school?
New York City Community College.
And was that a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree?
Two.
and
And then I worked, and then Dad got, when I got a job, that's when we decided to get married because we could afford a one-room apartment.
and when did you, Dad? When did you decide to go to dental school?
I wanted to be a physician. But I was going to school at night. The only place, I couldn't make an American med school, so I wanted to go to Switzerland. And I went to Georgetown. My brother was in Georgetown Dental School. So
Yeah, but tell them why you decided not to go to medical school.
well, I used to do autopsies and I used to assist at Hempstead General. And this young lady, she was very young. She came in and her physician didn't get there right away and we had an emergency. She went into insulin shock and we had a team. And she died. And the physician didn't come for about 2-3 hours, and the husband came out, and I was the first one to meet the husband, and he said, "How's my wife?" And I said, "The physician will tell you he'll be here soon." And I knew I couldn't handle that, not being there when they needed you, and he's too busy in the office for 2-3, and we're doing autopsies the next day, and I said, I didn't want it anymore, so I got a very late interview at Georgetown Medical Dental School, and I went,
And so you moved down to, what did you?
I didn't move. I went there, And the dean, who was a biochemist, interviewed me with two other professors, and I was a biochemist. You know, I was doing biochemical work. I wasn't a biochemist, but I was doing biochemical work. So he interviewed me for about 2 hours. He dismissed the other people, and he said to me, Mr. Felsen, you do this work. Do you know what you're doing? And I said, what I do very well. I'm not a biochemist. I don't have a degree. You know. Finally, he dismissed these other people, and then he said to me, it was very strange because Mom wasn't there. He said to me, if you could come up with $2,500 or some number like that, we have a place for you in our class. Meanwhile, it's July, right?
June or July, yeah.
July. So I leave, and I call up Mom from Washington, and I said, he said he has a place in the class. She says, what class? So I said, well, a year from now, because, you know, they must have a full class. So I said, well, you know, he really didn't say anything. I'm going to call his office. I went back, I didn't call, I went back to, and I said.
And Georgetown is where? Where is it located?
It's
Was.
in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I said, is it for next year? He says, no, this year, which was 7 weeks away or 6 weeks away, or something like that. So I got admitted to that class. I couldn't believe it.
Well,
I
we had to
didn't
borrow.
have
We didn't have
$2,500.
$2,500.
I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have 20. I had $1.20. You know, I didn't have any money. So
My parents lent us.
Sheila's parents
Took out a
loan, and I got the $2,500, and we got some apartment that was filthy, and it wasn't far from Uncle Herbie.
That's how we met Herbie and Diane.
That's where we met.
He was going to law school while Dad was going to dental
And
school.
we each had 12 cents together. But that's how I got into dental school. And I worked while I was in dental school, not supposed to be working. I worked at the Giant. Is that what it's called, Giant?
Mhm.
Yeah, I worked at the Giant, and Mom got a temporary teaching license, and she worked in Prince George's County.
Of course, I didn't have my dental hygiene license yet for Washington, from Maryland.
She didn't pass the board.
So then, once I passed the board, so then I was working 5 days a week teaching, and then on the weekends I would do dental hygiene. I couldn't do it after a while, and dental hygiene paid me more. So then I quit, and I used to do dental hygiene 6 days a week.
Teacher of the year.
Yeah, I was teacher of the year 1 year.
What did you teach?
I taught 3rd and 4th grade. And
And she taught him math by doing casino.
casino. I taught the kids arithmetic by teaching them casino. But I worked six days a week as a hygienist. That was
Who
a
did you
lot.
work for?
Oh, I can't even remember that.
Yeah.
But like one was it one
No.
office or you
Three.
multiple
No, I
multiple?
worked
ti-
Three.
for 3 different offices.
Dr. Markham, LeBlanc, and
I can't remember. the
third
other
one, I don't know. But
So-
she worked her ass off.
So what was the environment like at Georgetown Medical Dental School when you were a student?
Well, they had a quota. They only allowed 10% Jews in the school. But it was a medical dental school, so to save money, they combined, all the lectures were combined medical and dental. After 2 years, the physicians would go to the hospital, and the dentist would go to a dental clinic, and they would do their work. But for the first 2 years, you were a number, and you took the same exams, you took everything, it was exactly the same, you just had a number. And invariably, the top 10 in the class were all Jews.
Nowadays would
Now-
probably be
yeah.
all Asians.
Probably all Asians.
How did they know? Did they know you were Jewish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because they
How-
only take 10%.
But how did they know? Did they ask?
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah,
So on a piece of paper they asked in your
Yeah.
application?
yeah. And then we had some rivalry. We played softball, the Jews against the Guineas. Did we not?
No, the
Who are
Hebes,
the
wasn't it?
Guineas?
The Hebes against the
the Guineas.
Irish and the International Diane was something like that. We would fight. It wasn't funny, and the women would come down and they'd be the cheerleaders. Get a bagel, get a bagel, get a bagel. And we had a couple of teachers in there too.
And then we took out loan after loan after loan,
You know,
and then
it's
it took
terrible when
us-
you don't have money. It's the worst thing in the world when you don't have money. It's very stressful.
We lived on potato latkes. That was our main source of nutrition. And after Dad graduated, it took us 7 years to pay off the loan.
I still have the loan books.
7 years.
At that time, of course, I was never a lightweight, but when I was playing ball, this was my weight. And then I weighed 265 pounds. And when I graduated, I went and enlisted in the Air Force
Why?
because I didn't
Because
want to
they were-
open up an office and then be
'Cause they were
conscripted.
drafting.
Well, what was going on in the world at that time?
Vietnam.
And people were being drafted?
Uh-huh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And did you get a draft card or whatever with a number on
You got
it?
to register.
No, but I mean, did you get something with a number on it?
No, they didn't have a lottery like you. No.
Okay. And so you were concerned that,
I'd spend whatever I needed to spend to open up an office, and then they
And
pulled
then
me out.
call. So why don't you get rid of it?
What do I get? I had no money.
okay, so you joined the Air Force.
I went down to Walter Reed Hospital. I didn't know that I was going to see a general there or anybody. I was in shorts and what I looked like, and they swore me into the Air Force.
And
How was the training?
Oh, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute, but I had to go someplace to a camp. You know, I had to be assigned. So, you know, I look stupid, but I'm not really. So I went down to Surgeon General's office, which is in Washington, D.C., and I wanted to open up an office in New York. So I talked to the Surgeon General himself, and he said, I can't do that because you got to be 150 miles away, all sorts of things. But he said to me, there's a woman out there that gives assignments. So the woman weighed 300 pounds. So I didn't go to talk to her first. I went out and I bought 2 pounds of candy. So when I spoke to her, I said, listen, I really have to be assigned close to New York because my father-in-law's sick, and I'm not made up some story. So it was very difficult because she said, where do you want to go? So
See, now you can't do that because it's all done by computer.
She said, do you want to ski or do you want to sail? So I said, either one, as long as it's not overseas. So she put me in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. An hour north, I skied, and I went to the Cape an hour south. So that's where I spent 2 years.
and where did you, what was the living, I mean, were there little houses there?
They give you
It was
a
the
term.
best housing we ever had. We lived on base.
On base, they have offices, housing. You give up a certain amount of dollars, a housing allowance. They take that from you and give you this house, but they give you
But
this
to
house.
us, it was
We
luxury.
never had a
It
house.
was 2 bedrooms, had a washer and dryer, no dishwasher.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
we
it was
never
like,
had.
we never had anything like that.
And we owed out dollars, so in my last year of school, this is where the trauma came in. In my last year of service, you have to position yourself to go to work when you get out. Well, I went down to Virginia. I went down to Maryland because that's where we were living. I thought I'd open up an office, but I got hooked up with this builder, Morris Miller was his name, and he was opening up he was opening up a shopping center in Virginia. And I went to see him and I said, when will you have the shopping center open? And he said, May of this year, 1966. And I said, have you started building? he threw an overlay on a piece of ground.
Could be 66. It was 64.
I graduated in '64, 2 years later.
Oh,
in
right,
66.
right.
He threw an overlay over this picture of woods, and there was the shopping center. So I said, I want that office, this office. And I made a deal with him. Except I got out in June of, or maybe July 6th of 1966, and I had no job, and I had no money.
Pregnant with Daniel.
And I had no money.
And you had a baby. You had
No, wait a minute, I had no place to work, because the thing wasn't ready till like November. And I could not get a job. I went through A to Z in the thing. I went to the Jewish fraternities, give me some part-time work. I finally got a job with a guy named, God bless him, he's dead, but Yavorsky. I did every dentist starting with A. Well, I had $68. We had to pay rent. I had $68 to my name. My office wasn't ready. I had no job. David was born. Mom was pregnant. She was in the hospital giving birth to Daniel. And Ma came down to watch David. She got sick. We put her in the hospital. Betty Ann came to watch David. She got sick, put her in the hospital. What am I going to do with David? A neighbor.
Stranger.
You know, this couple, they watched David, and Mom had Daniel, and my office wasn't ready.
And then when it came to,
And then I
when it came to,
had to get Mom out of the hospital. I had no money. So I spoke to the obstetrician, God bless him.
he's dead now too. So.
What was his
we
name?
couldn't get out, Dr.
Piver.
Piver. So
Jules
we didn't
Piver.
have enough money to get dismissed out of the hospital.
So I said, what are you gonna do, keep her? So he said, look, I'll pay all the bills. You'll pay me when you can. He paid all the bills.
As a matter of fact, I stayed with him till he passed away, which
Just a
was
few years
2
ago.
years ago. And I wrote his wife a letter saying that I know you know lots of wonderful things about your husband. But I told her the story.
It was a stressful time.
How he paid my hospital bill. And we did, you know, I paid him back, but he did pay the hospital bill so we could go home.
You know.
How
And
did you?
then we had Daniel. And then my office,
Such a good baby.
yeah. Then my office was opened, and I made no money that first year, a minimum dollars. And the IRS came after me for 2-3 days. I said, why are you after me? I made no. He says, we're not after you. I'm training this other guy how to do a field of. And then this office, the surrounding area started to build up, and I started to get busier and busier, and I took on associates and partners and all that sort of stuff. And
What happened with? First of all, you mentioned Betty Ann. How did you meet Betty Ann?
Betty Ann worked for Uncle Stanley and his wife and Bobby.
First wife, yep.
And first wife, she used to babysit for Stacy when Stanley was in school. Because they were working, she was like the nanny. And that's how I met her.
So excuse me when you do.
And
And
she
then
was
she
an
worked-
integral part of our life.
Yeah, she was black mama to my children. And we treated her very well, you know, and she took care of the kids.
Oh, you know what part we left out? When Dad was a senior that was a big thing. When you were a senior in dental school, and we had been trying to get pregnant and
Didn't work out.
didn't work out. And finally, with Dr. Piva's help, I did get pregnant and was so excited. And then I started having big problems,
Mhm.
and I had to quit my job,
While she was pregnant, she was having problems carrying the baby.
and I had to do bed rest. So we had no income. We had zip. So we couldn't get any more student loans. So someone lent us money. And took us several years to pay that back also.
Yeah, well, it's just bad, not, look, rich or poor, it's great to have some money. But things happened, I started building up this thing, and Mom was, worked in my office one day or sometimes 2 days a week, and also if the other hygienists were sick or anything, she filled in there too. And we decided, other things happened, like they would go to the beach, and I bought a piece of land, and without her knowing it, and I gave her a birthday present, a deed to a piece of land, and we decided to build this house out where our house is, and we built it. She wasn't happy about it, but not we built it, she built it, because she didn't skip a step. The kids went to Hebrew school, the kids, everything was the same, only she oversaw building this house, and the house was built. So the rest of it was just coming along, and then Deborah was born. And
Deborah was born in the first house.
in the first house. And then all of us were out in Fairfax Station, and I kept building up the practice. And then one day, I dropped an instrument on a Monday, and I couldn't pick it up. And so I went to neurologists and things like that. And Friday I had to retire, because my insurance, if they declare you ill or handicapped or whatever they want to call it, your insurance is null and void. So if you keep working and you hurt somebody, I would have no insurance. So malpractice insurance, I couldn't take that chance. So I sold my practice in 4 days.
But the bottom line is, we had a great life.
Absolutely.
I can't think of anything that I would have done differently.
We had
Had lots of fun.
3 great kids. They married 3 great people. They had.
Oh, the mom's okay.
No, I'm telling you, we are luckiest.
We are the luckiest.
If you would hear stories that I hear from, we're in that social thing. We're very fortunate. We love you all, and you just made us a great life.
How did
All
you
of
meet
you.
Uncle Buzzy?
Uncle Buzzy, we met in Virginia, just in shul or something like
No,
that.
through the dental stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was an oral surgeon, so we sent him work, everybody was sending each other.
What about your other child, Jip?
Jip.
Oh.
Jip.
Tell us about Jip.
The kids wanted a dog,
Well, we all wanted it. I wanted a dog
so
too.
we went to this breeder, and
Such a nice dog.
the breeder had named this dog Chip, and the kids would call him Jip, because they couldn't either say Chip or didn't know to say Chip. So we brought this little thing, it was this big. There, of course, he became this big, but that was my dog, our dog. And ultimately, the breeder, a different breeder, wanted to use him because he was a royal standard poodle, and he was papered and all that. So we bred him, and we got to pick a litter, and we got Sonny.
Sonny.
That was his son, so we called him Sonny. And the 2 of them wreaked havoc in our neighborhood because they were hunters and they used to hunt together. They cause so much trouble.
Well, what about when some stories with before we had Sonny with Jip in the when we used to live in Camelot, and what did he
Oh,
what did he
God.
snatch out of that lady's arms?
A rabbit. She was holding the rabbit.
He never touched her.
So she was so, so Daddy said, don't get excited, here's $1, go buy it.
I said, I'll buy you,
that.
I didn't say that. I said, I'll buy you another rabbit. In 2 months, you'll have 6 of them.
I heard a story about, tell us how you found your first house.
Oh, God.
And what was the most important thing to you, Dad, about before you would buy the house? What did you need to make sure
I
fit?
had to get my car in
Car
there.
in the garage, that's all.
Because
All the car
you
fit
gotta
in the garage.
remember, childhood always affects you psychologically and things that you do later on in life. I never had any money. We never had any money. So I carry a lot of money. I carry more than most because I feel insecure, being insecure. Never had a car, a new car. So the first car I had, I remember Mom talking to her girlfriends, and I said, I'm going out to buy a car. She said, get a green one. And the women said, don't you say what kind of car to buy? No, we spoke about it, and I said, I always wanted a Cadillac. So the first car I ever had was a green Cadillac. So now I never had a house. So we got a house, and I had a Cadillac. I had to put the car in the house. Because to tell you the truth, later on in life, we went to downsize once. We went to a house, I forgot the name of the builder, whatever you call that guy. But he built this, he builds a community. He builds community houses.
You know, those retirement communities,
So I went in to look at the biggest house they had. We said, listen, we're coming from a big house, so we don't want to waste any time. Show us the biggest thing you have, and then we'll work from there. Takes us into this house. It's not a great big house because we came from a big one, but it was ample. And I said, I took about 20 steps in there, and the women, the realtor and Mom went this way, and I said, we can't live here. Sheila says, why? I said, because I can't get my car in the garage. She says, don't be silly. No one builds a house that you can't get a car in. So the realtor says, what kind of car do you have? I said, well, I have a Lincoln Town Car. She says, you can't get in the garage. She said, forget it. So see, it had...
a web community, that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, so I never had a new car. We were talking about money, so I decided that I will always have a new car. I always have a new car. And so those things, even though they might not be economically sound, or just, that's what I want, that's what we want, that's what we're gonna have, because it doesn't make, the differential is not that great. And if it satisfies someone psychologically, and you can afford it, you gotta be able to afford it, you afford it. You know, you just do it. Because, as I said, your childhood affects the way you think later on. And then I got all these kids and grandchildren, and they're doing so well, everybody, and that they even talk to each other, which makes things phenomenal.
So we really lucked out.
We are lucky, and we've had a great life.
I have a question. Am I allowed to ask?
Yes.
Sure.
What's the best life lesson Ma ever taught you? Ma, Pa, Grandma, and Grandpa. One lesson. If you had to pick the one lesson.
Oh, I know one.
They said,
When
you
I
can't-
share
said
it?
to my mother,
Mm.
how come, you know, like, my sister and I get along, and I always felt this love from my parents. My parents were wonderful to me. They were so poor, but they were so wonderful. And I said, I want to do that too, you know, I want to have that kind. So I said, how do you do that? And she says, never lie to your children. I said, okay.
Ever?
That's what she said, never lie.
And my mother, she loved me very much. When we decided to get married, she had
Wait,
to talk.
let me clarify. In other words, if you can't afford something, you say, I'd love to get it for you, but at this time, we can't afford it. I mean,
And then
just
eventually-
tell and the kids will understand.
And then eventually, as kids get older and realize the value of dollars, and whether you have it or not, they don't ask for it, you know, because they realize that you want to provide for your children, but you can't. But I always tell a story about my mother because she loved me very much. When we decided to get married, she had a talk with the prospective bride, right? And she told her, she said, "Are you crazy? Why are you marrying that bum?" That's her son. "Why are you marrying that bum?" So after that, of course, we got married and things turned out right. Whenever I sign anything,
Is that why you signed a bum?
Can you tell us the stories of some of your favorite pranks that you
Oh,
pulled?
God.
Well, tell the one about when you were watching Joy.
Oh my God.
This one with the diaper.
Come on, tell the story. We need to preserve it for
Well, Uncle
posterity.
Herbie, Uncle Herbie had about as much money as we did, and you could count it in coins. And he is a brilliant, not a savant, but he is brilliant. So we used to have,
What does this have to do with what happened with Joy?
I'm gonna tell you. We used to have bets, and it was, he went to law school at night. He worked during the day and went to school at night. And we used to have bets, a penny, if 75 was passing, he always said he failed. So I said, well, you'll get, for every point over the passing grade, because you said you failed, you'll give me a penny. And for every one that you really failed, I'll give you 2 cents. And he did the same with me, with my, and we were always paying each other because we did rather well in school. Well, he didn't have to study as much as I did, but I had to study around the clock. I got good grades, but I studied around the clock. So he had chores and everything, and he had a baby. So I said, well, you can't schlep the baby around.
What's the baby's name?
Joy. So I would watch the baby.
He means we. Not I.
Okay. You weren't there that day?
Of course I was. What are you
Okay,
talking
maybe you
about?
were. I don't remember you being there, but.
Of course
why-
it's all about you. Yes, you, of
Yeah,
course
maybe.
it was.
I think you
We never
were.
watched the baby alone. We
Yeah.
always watched the baby together.
I guess so. So what they did was they always left us with supplies, and in those days, they had what they called diaper bags. On one side of the
Because they
bag,
didn't have disposable diapers.
they had a big center and two zippered compartments on the outside. One was for clean diapers, then inside was the powder and all that sort of stuff, and the other side was dirty diapers. So I took a clean diaper, and we had chopped liver in the house, and I made a little turd, and I wrapped it up,
It was out of chopped liver, right?
and a chopped liver,
So it looked like a baby's turd.
and I put it in the used thing. And here I am, I'm studying physiology or biochemistry, I don't remember what it was, and they came back, and we're talking, and I said, you know, she's very healthy. And Uncle Herbie, you say, how the hell do you know if she's healthy? You know, I'm just a student. I said, well, you can tell by their excrements. He says, what do you mean? I go on the dirty side, I open it up, I go like this. I said, Aunt Diane immediately vomits. And she immediately vomits on the at the scene. So that was the big thing.
That was a good thing.
But as she got older,
No, what about the poor Joy?
with the onesies, with the onesies, I got to-
Remember, because we went to
As she-
Broad.
as she got older, I would watch her also, but she was larger. She was this big. So it was in the evening, and we had to put her to sleep. So I went in the drawers, and I took out a onesie. You know what a onesie is?
You know,
It's all
Yeah.
when the foots go in and the hands go. Well, I went in the wrong drawer, and instead of taking out, let's say, a size 6, I took out a size 3.
So she was like,
So I couldn't get the arms in. I got the legs in, and I couldn't. Finally, I got it in. And she was buckled, like, you know.
Diane came over.
Here's this kid. The kid is like this.
It was terrible.
So we had a whole lot of fun
We
with
experimented.
sure. And then when we got our own, we knew what to do.
Oh, we
knew
knew exactly what to do.
or not to, or what not to do.
What, I remember you told a story about Jip used to watch Deborah.
Oh, that's a
Oh,
wonderful
gee.
story.
That
That's a wonderful
is the
story.
real story. We're living on in Kings
Woodburn.
Park. What's the name of the
No,
place?
Woodburn.
Camelot.
Road.
We're living in Camelot, and we have Deborah. And Deborah, we in those days.
Well, first of all, the boys shared a bedroom, and then Deborah had a bedroom with the crib with. Jip always slept in the bedroom with the boys. He slept on the floor. From the day we brought Deborah home, he left the boys' room and started sleeping under Deborah's crib.
Just stay there. Stay there.
Nobody told him to do that, but he just did it.
Of course, when the family went over to Deborah, there's nothing. Well, it happened that Art Altman, if you remember
Art
the,
Altman, yeah.
remember Art Altman?
I remember the Altman family. I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah. So he came over, and Jip was barking at him.
it was under the,
So,
it was under the
you know, he
crib.
wanted to see the baby. So I said, look, I'm sorry, Art. I'm sorry the dog's barking at you, but I don't want to reprimand the dog because I don't want anybody near the crib. He says, what do you mean, the dog, the crib? I said, don't go near the crib. He says, what are you talking about? I said, well, make a move to the crib. I said, I told you, right? Well, go make a move to the crib. Jip came right out on him, and they didn't bite him, but
And Jip stayed under the crib until Deborah slept through the night. She must have been about 4 or 5 months old, 6 months old. And then he went back to the boys.
Do you have any interesting stories of David, Daniel, and Deborah growing up? Things they did, things they didn't do.
they were good
They
kids.
were so good.
They were all
The jar
good.
peanut
Oh,
butter.
your father, we almost had a national thing with him. Your father was very punctual.
Is this with the Little Theater?
Oh, Jesus.
No, before that, the worst thing that ever happened. We lived in a townhouse before, in an apartment, before we bought a house. And we had all these neighbors from the service, and they
Oh,
would
geez.
sit on the porch all the time at
Mm,
night, and
I
they
don't wanna
drank a
remember
lot
that.
and stuff. And that was the
So
worst
they
thing
had
that ever
hurricane
happened.
lamps at night. You know what a hurricane lamp is?
To keep
It's
the bugs
a little
away.
lamp, you put fluid in the bottom and you light it up,
Keeps bugs away.
alcohol, it keeps bugs away. Your father went out and he thought it was,
Betty Ann, I went to the store, Betty Ann was there that day. I went to the Giant.
I was working.
Daniel saw the fluid out there,
Was it,
thought it was Kool-Aid, it was red. He drank it.
he drank the Kool-Aid.
She came and got me, because we didn't have cell phones. Got me at the Giant. Got Lonnie.
I left my office. The
Ran
ambulance
home. The
came,
ambulance came, and the ambulance said, don't try,
and
and
followed
follow
because
us.
I go too fast.
because I went in the ambulance with him.
I got a Cadillac, he got an ambulance.
When we got to the emergency room, Dad was already there.
And I alerted I said, I have a poison, poison thing. They were alerted,
That
they
was
had
the
him.
worst thing that
They
ever
got him,
happened.
and we were just, he went into chemical pneumonia,
Because they
And-
made him throw it up, so it burnt.
and all I wanted to hear him cry. So he would be breathing finally he cried, and he did all right. He had pneumonia for a little while.
That was the worst thing.
How old was he?
No, gee, maybe 10.
Deborah wasn't born? How old?
No, 7, 10, 7, 8, 9, 10.
How could he be 7, 8, 9, 10? He's only 3 years older than
I
Deborah.
told you, 3, 4 years old.
Must have been 2.
And we lived in the town. Deborah was born, we moved into the house.
Okay, you're right.
So he must have been about maybe 3 years old.
2. Those were 3
2 or
years.
3.
And then,
That was the worst thing.
then I had the cops out. I thought he was snatched because he was punctual, and he said he'd meet me right at the exit of the little theater,
Out New Braddock, right?
Mhm.
Lake Braddock School.
It's in the same place as it is now, right?
Yep.
Same exact place. So I go, and he's not there. I said, maybe he went back home. I couldn't find him. Went back, and I called the police. The police came, and mom's
I was at
aunt
the airport
used
going to
to
see
Florida,
my mother because my mother was sick.
and we didn't know whether to stop. She didn't know whether to come off. So I had the cops put, I'll call it, I don't know what it's called, an APB out at the airport, at the railroad stations, try to get a picture of him. Like, we don't take pictures. At that time, we did take pictures. Didn't have one handy. It was crazy. I was running back and forth, and I had the police doing all sorts of things. Finally, for some reason, I went back to the school maybe 2 hours later. And he comes sashaying. I fell asleep. I never thought of looking. I didn't know he was inside the theater. You know, I had no idea what he was doing in school. He's supposed to be outside. I aged about 10 years. That was terrible. Absolutely terrible. But that's the story, and then everything is, the rest of it is just history, you know, all of that.
Benjamin mentioned something about a peanut butter jar.
I think it's something more that Dad can probably tell about. When you were playing with a jar of peanut butter, you were tossing it back and forth with Uncle David.
Yeah, well, that's it's just something from me and David. So what about
And they always play jokes on me, the 4 of them. I'm acrophobic, and I'm very, that's a good word, controlling. I don't know about controlling, but
Anal retentive.
protective. Yes, retentive and protective. So we used to go every year up to apple pick, and we would stay in Bear Mountains. Bear Mountains, what's it
No.
called?
Bear Mountain's in New York.
No, what was
Graves
it called?
Mountains, Shenandoah Mountains.
Blue Ridge Mountains. They had cabins type of thing. So we would take a cabin one night and stay 1 or 2 nights and then go apple picking close by. But there was a cliff. We were up on a cliff. And of course, I don't go near the edge of the cliff. I didn't know that over the cliff, about 2, 3 feet down, there was a landing that went out about 30 feet or something like that. So they climbed over, all of them, and started screaming, "Help, help." Meanwhile, I'm 60, 70 feet back. And I go down on the ground, and I start crawling like you see. But I have to be on the ground, I had to be flat. I'm a bloody mess. By the time I get to the end of the thing, I'm a bloody mess. That was pretty funny. That was pretty funny.
Well, similar happened at the Statue of Liberty, didn't it?
what happened at the Statue of Liberty?
Well, going up isn't bad.
He couldn't get
I
down.
couldn't get down. I couldn't get down. It was too steep for me. You know, being acrophobic. So I would get on my ass, remember?
Get down on your ass.
All those people were laughing. And all
Yeah,
that.
they're still laughing.
Make fun. Make fun. But I did save a kid's life. When Mom and I were younger, of course we had no money, as you know. So we used to go to the park every day, or most days, to see each other and to play. You know, so we were on the grass doing what people do, and this woman comes running. It was like in April. This woman comes running, it's, my son, he's drowning. So Sheila was also very obedient. If her mother told her to be home by 4:30 or 5 o'clock, she had to be home then. So I told her to go home, and I went down.
I was there with you, Lonnie.
Were
When
you?
the police came, I was
Okay,
there with you.
That's
I
right.
didn't go when the police took you home, but I was there.
That's right. So what happened was that it's the New York Harbor, the port. So there are bulkheads, the park, at the water edge, there are bulkheads type of thing. And here's this kid, he's swimming, and he's drowning. He's out there. So I always wore dungarees and a shirt, and Mom wore dungarees. You always change, we didn't have much clothes, so you changed when you got home. And so I got undressed, I remember, and I dove into this water, and I got to this kid, and I was holding him up, and I brought him to the bulkhead, because we were getting tired. So the waves were smashing us against this bulkhead, where they had the shells, the mollusks that started bleeding and all that. So I took him out 20 feet, away from there, so we wouldn't get hurt. Finally here, and maybe 6 police cars come, and they throw this tire in, and this kid was like limp, He wasn't dying,
He was
he
tired.
was just tired. I tied him into this tire, I remember somehow I got him to tire, and they hauled up this kid
Up out of the water?
out of the water in the tire. And guess what? The kid was up, they decided to leave. So there was one car that stayed. They got me out of the water, and one car stayed, and they wanted to leave, so they would start to leave. So I started screaming at them, and they decided that they were right to take me home. So they wrapped me in canvas. They had a canvas there. They wrapped me in canvas and put me in this thing, and they took me to my house. And they rang the bell, and of course my mother saw the police car, came in, meanwhile I'm pinned, being wrapped up. And she was so happy, she came up and beat the shit out of me in the car.
Why?
Because the police, if you're in with police, you're bad, you're a criminal. No, don't hit him anymore. He saved this kid. So if you looked in the paper the next day, they had this big article about how the police saved this kid that was drowning. That was fun.
Mhm.
And that's about the size of it.
Yeah, we just had a great life. I mean,
Can you tell us about Olam Tikva?
That's interesting.
I was pregnant with Daniel,
I'm gonna tell you.
and I said, "Look at that sign. It looks like a Jewish thing." So Dad said, "I don't know. It must be some society or something." I mean, it just didn't seem right. It was just a wooden sign. So we ended up calling, and we were like the 37th family.
33rd, I thought.
37, whatever. And we used to meet in the basement
Of the old house.
of the Grossmans, who now are no longer with us,
Mhm.
at their house in Vienna. And then
Eight families decided to make a formal synagogue, and they bought this land.
and
that had
then
an
they
old
bought the
house.
land.
Which had a house in it, and we had services. We had a part-time rabbi, and we had services in the basement of this little house.
The little house that was on the property until
Yep.
the
Right.
renovation.
Then more people came, and more people came, and we were very active. And more people came, and then ultimately, we built the first part of the building. And we were just very active in the Jewish community. In fact, we helped buy and build the Jewish Community Center.
Community Center.
I try to have medical and dental breakfasts and try to raise money that way. And at the Jewish community, there were only 3, I think, shuls. We drew from 25 miles circumference. There was Gudas Achim, right?
Mhm.
Arlington, Fairfax,
Right.
and us.
I don't even know, was Road of Shalom?
No, I don't
I
think so.
don't know if that was even open
But
then.
there were 3 all around, and then things just continually built up. And there was 600 and change.
And I remember you used to play on the softball team for the men's club.
Again, we were in a church league, and we used to fight. I mean, physically fight.
What did you play? What positions?
I played short and second base. I played third for a while, but I didn't have the arm like the other guys had. But I played good shortstop and second base.
And what sports did you do when you were growing up?
Growing up, I was handball, and baseball.
But there was no organized sports in those days. You just went to the schoolyard and played. There was no such thing as organized. But I used to feel so sorry for Deborah. She was this little baby, and I would schlep her from his ball game to Daniel's ball game to David's ball game. And the poor thing, she would go from, and I'd say, one day it'll be your turn to do something. And she would just sit in the stroller, and we'd go from game to game. I know.
Meanwhile, Daniel was a super athlete.
Super.
And then he
Broke his
decided.
leg.
Yeah, I watched him get his leg broken.
Yeah, that was.
Me too.
And you played
That's good.
you played ball in when you were in the Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I played handball.
Tell them the story about the general who called the house.
Meanwhile, I'm a captain. You know, captain, doctor type of thing. I'm a dentist. And I play handball. I was a handball player, and a good one.
A
And
very good one.
we were on a base, a SAC base, Strategic Air Command, where we had nuclear weapons, and they called it flexing. They would go to Spain, and they would go to England
And the whole crew travels together.
as a
And they
family.
stay together.
B-47s and then B-52s, and there would be a wing commander, and he was usually a full colonel or better, but the full colonel. But the colonel, I forgot his name, Williams. I forgot his name, but we'll call him Colonel Williams. Colonel Williams. Oh, and they go the gym is open 24 hours a day because everybody got to be in shape. So he would say, this is, he would call the house, and I wasn't home, or why, I don't know why I didn't answer the phone,
You weren't home.
but,
Oh, yes, you were home.
I was, but I would never answer the phone. Mom would answer the phone, and they said, this is Colonel Williams. Is Captain Felsen home? She would say, no, can I help you? I'm right next to her. No, can I help you? She says, well, we're reflexing in from Spain, and
Well, when will he be back? I don't know.
I don't know.
Where
Where is he?
I don't know.
When, is there a way to get in touch with him? I don't know. She says, can I help you? He says, this is Captain Williams. We're reflexing back from England, 27 nautical miles. We're gonna land with an ETA of 15 minutes. I wanted to play ball with him. I could be at the gym in 35 minutes. Well, why didn't you say so, Colonel? He says, Lon, here's the phone. Finally, I go down because he wanted to play. I go down to the gym to play with him. He says, you son of a bitch. He called me every night. And I said, why are you calling me all these names? He says, I've been in the service 30 years. I've been trying to get my wife to do what your wife did in 4 months. You know, not tell anybody where you are.
When we got into the service, Dad was 60 pounds heavier, so he was very large. So when he got his uniforms, you have to pay for your uniforms originally.
They give you a clothing
Well,
allowance,
yeah.
which is
Well, then
not-
he decided he wanted to lose weight, which he did. He lost the 60 pounds. So you could imagine, his shirts, the collars were down here. But we didn't want to buy more clothes.
because I was getting out.
His pants
The back pockets used to touch each
He'd
other.
make the belt so tight that the back pockets would touch each other. So he would have to he would wear a raincoat every day to go to work because you couldn't, it was ridiculous what he looked like. But we didn't want to pay money to buy a new uniform.
And I remember they gave me captain bars. You know, captain bars are 2 bars that designate captain. Well, I never remembered whether you wear them this way or you wear them this way. Is it? So whenever, and I never had on the hat the emblem. I don't know what. So when I would walk, I always walked. Many times I walked with my hospital commander. He was a full colonel, Colonel Shaw. And we would walk, and the generals would be coming by. The generals would be coming by, and the colonel, my hospital commander, would salute. And I would say, "Hi, Jim." He says, "Hi, Lon." so because I would treat him and his family.
And you played ball with him.
And I played ball with him. So my hospital commander, he hated me because he was 30 years, and I was, "Hi, Jim," and I had this, and I would.
Tell him about the guy with the snowplow.
Oh.
When we moved to New Hampshire in about September, they came out on the base and they had these tall poles, and they were painted orange on the top, and they were banging them in.
18-foot pole.
And I said, "What are you doing? What are these poles?" They said, "Wait, you'll see."
But they put it by the curbs so that the plows would not hit the curbs.
They were so snow. Sure enough, it snowed. We lived in a 2-story apartment. The snow came up to the 2nd floor window. So if you looked out your window, that's how much snow there was. So they had to have these tall poles.
And in the service,
He had to jump out of the window.
I had to get to the hospital, but in the service, the enlisted men, their families were not entitled to dental work.
They were so poor.
They were so poor. So we had a great dental crew. We worked at night,
And they would work on
and
them.
we work on the things. So I did a lot of work for these people. So they would work the plows. So we lived in a housing development, for offices. They didn't understand, all my neighbors didn't understand how come, and when I talk about a snowplow, I'm talking about Air Force snowplows, which when they do the runways, they do it in tandem. They're the biggest monster snowplows you could ever see. And they go down, the next one goes down, the next one goes down. So when they came on our street, they would do the gutter, and they would turn around. They had to turn around. So they'd pick up the plow, they'd come into my driveway, drop the plow, back out, take all the snow out of it. How come they turn around, Lonnie, how come they always turn around in your driveway? I don't know. I don't know.
What about, I think you told me about times where, they would have practice drills where there'd be, catastrophic events.
Yeah, I was the environmental health officer.
And I would walk with David in the baby carriage, and if I went to the commissary, I'd buy donuts and things, and they were playing their war games, and I'd give them donuts.
But I
and
would
donuts.
never, they always wanted to issue me a gun, and I wouldn't take the gun, So I was the environmental health officer that had to declare if there was a nuclear bomb, what to do, So I was also on the board of the officers club. So when we would, Claxton would go off and everything, and we jump into ambulances, we go out into the field and say, "Oh, it's a direct hit, everybody's dead, see you at the officers club." And we'd all go to the officers club, declare them all dead. That was funny.
Were you compensated for the work you performed on the enlisted men?
No,
No.
now you go to jail.
He was compensated by having his driveway plowed.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, no.
No.
No, we used to use our own
They
money
couldn't
to buy supplies.
They couldn't
So
afford
we didn't want it, we weren't gonna get into trouble using government taxpayers thing. We bought the filling material for the thing, from our money. So, because we weren't gonna cross anything. Wind it up.
All right,
Talking
anybody
too
have any
long.
more questions they want to ask Bobby and Sadie? Okay, well, thank you for talking with us.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, thank you for being our children.
Bye.
Yeah.
They have
Bye.
a choice in the matter.